Hello everyone. In the first part on Anthills, Serpents and Umbrellas, we looked a bit at the veneration of anthills mainly in India. We saw how these practice may be the origin of certain religious symbolism and mythology. I mentioned the habit of termites of mining the underground for water and mineral, and some of the medicinal values this water and termite hill clay have for the worshippers. Also, I touched on the value for prospectors of the mining industry who use the mounds as indicators for hidden treasure. Serpents seek refuge for the heat by occupying the well-ventilated abandoned anthills and are thus closely associated with them in mythology. Becoming in this mythology, they become the gods of the mythical treasure that is buried underneath the hill. Although originally considered the Mother Earth goddess, the rise of new religions caused anthropomorph representations to emerge, and although differing in allocation of gender of both snake and deity, the fertility connection remains invariable. So in this part, again, I will look at the behavior of termites and ants, addressing their relation to electric and magnetic fields, their agriculture, and how this may have reflected in religious iconography. Termites in northern Australia are the only ones which build their colonies aligned with the Earth's magnetic north-south. The theory is that this is their way of dealing with the extreme day and night temperatures, with extreme differences. The reason why these termites are the only ones on Earth applying this kind of climatic engineering probably has to do with the fact that Australia is experiencing the least fluctuations in the geomagnetic fields. Generally, ants use geomagnetic fields to reorientate for when foraging, although that is not the only thing they use to find the nest. Landmarks, smell, light polarization during the day as well as during the night, or other methods they use. Researchers found out they even count their steps. Although not receiving full recognition of the scientific orthodoxy, or within that, the idea of geomagnetic energy grids is not new. When addressing these, people mostly talk about Hartmann or Curry grids. These energy grid lines cross at regular points, resulting in an extra energized spot. That is the theory, but there are more phenomena around able to amplify the Earth's current or telluric currents, such as underground river systems, for example, or cavities, or the presence of mineral veins with a larger potential than the surrounding area, etc. These spots are not good to dwell at a long time because they induce a destructive vibration. Termites and ants are a few of the animals that love to roam there, attracted by the low electric fields. They are known indicators for geopathic stress. I will not go into this too much here, but will leave a link to an excellent documentary on this phenomenon and why it is important to take it in consideration when seeking a house to live in. The degrading of matter under this influence is largely increased, and since termites are in the degrading and composting business themselves, well, it's a good match. These spots, combined with the less stable longitudinal telluric currents induced by solar wind, could result in an extraordinary energetic sensation. Again, the mining industry has a lot of interest in these spots. Within the India Shastu Vastu, or the Chinese Feng Shui, this is of main importance in architecture. The amount of energy and the direction of the flow, moving shallowly under the Earth's crust, does not only depend on our star but also on the moon cycles. It's quite an interesting topic to research, so make sure to check the links if you're interested. So why am I saying all this? What has this to do with anthills being worshipped? It took like a long time to try and put pieces of info together, as I was constantly aware of possible bias, yeah? But I eventually think I may have a valid point with all this, so please bear with me. Quite a deal of the old churches and temples all over the world are built on spots where grid lines cross. When building a basilica or a cathedral on top of an old pagan sanctuary, for example, the provost would invite a dowser to exactly locate the center of this energy emanation, to eventually put the building, build the building around these spots. The very center would be the place in front of the altar or right under the dome. The influence of these energy releases on the believers when standing in front of the altar would be sensed, possibly resulting in a quote-unquote religious experience. This would work, at least as long as people didn't wear insulating shoes. So, did medieval man know about telluric currents? Well, not necessarily, but they certainly knew dowsing. They knew dowsing worked just fine to find water and ore. And we know they used these energized spots regardless if they fully understood the physics of it all. When Mr. Tellinger mentions how some of the clients he takes on a visiting tour to these supposed fairy circles or so-called fairy circles in Africa, he says like that some of his clients are unable to remain in these circles because they feel bad in them. This might be related to these energy grids, yeah? But I couldn't exclude suggestion, of course. So, but these so-called fairy circles are caused by termites. They dig a nest a nest underground, and are halted when they encounter neighboring colonies. Their water management and soil degradation allows specific grasses to dominate the soil above, resulting in these curious features. Unless you favor fairy tales above reality, nature's ways, for me, they are awesome. These features appear in Australia as well, by the way. For those waiting for me to mention ley lines, I can only advise to go read up on what a Mr. Paul Devereux has to say about all that. He is the co-editor of Time and Mind, Archaeology, Consciousness and Culture. There is a link underneath to a resume of his work on ley lines published on abovetopsecret.com. If the worshippers were somehow aware of this energy is hard to say, but indeed it would add to the devotive character of the place. Now, there is something I didn't mention before about termites, namely that they have their own kind of agriculture. Inside their mounds, they maintain a perfectly balanced climate with ventilation system. They keep it moist by harvesting water from deep aquifers. And these are all factors needed to create perfect breeding rooms for mushrooms. More specifically, termites grow one particular genus of mushroom, namely the Termitomyces. Although still unclear how they do it, they manage to avoid infestation by any other mold or harmful bacteria. In this way, the bugs are probably responsible for the lack of genetic differentiation of the mushrooms, which can be found in many continents. I found an excellent article written by a biologist going into detail about the fungus-termite relationship. He describes this from the viewpoint of the fungus, which makes it extra interesting. An example for this perfect symbiosis is that of an ant species of which the queens, when swarming, carry along spores of the fungus in a specially for the purpose designed mouthpiece. In this way, she can start with this breed to grow her own food and that for her colony. The termites and ants go out of their way to provide perfect circumstances to farm. Leafcutter ants, for example, transport the pieces of leaf they vigorously cut off, not to feed themselves, but to provide a compost for their fungi. Mushrooms love electric fields. They thrive with the occurrence of high voltage surges. Reminded me of some videos I have seen explaining how electrical storms in the desert are known by the desert dwellers to cause a specific fungus to emerge in an otherwise arid area. But I'm not looking for that kind of mana at the moment. Neither am I looking for shiitake. Apparently, the global demand for shiitake has caused a shortage in Japan in an attempt to increase productivity. The Japanese mushroom industry is since a few years using a method by which they zap the mushrooms with 50 hertz, causing them to reproduce and grow abundantly. Termites have been around for millions of years, and fungi much longer than that. Termites and Termitomyces depend on each other. I think it is not at all far-fetched to assume that the critters would locate their nests on energized spots in the field on purpose, in this way stimulating the growth of their mushrooms. I mean, a farmer would choose fertile ground depending on what his product needs to prosper. There have been studies about the ability of termites to impact the electric fields around them by simultaneous vibration. It is also a way of communication for them. So if the energy change they create has any impact on their crop, it would be yet another example of their sophistication, would it not? But that may be one speculation too far. I have more examples to underline the divine character that was given to these impressive hills and mounts. Each year at monsoon season, the Termitomyces grow abundantly where the white ants reside. They are collected, and in the region of Goa in West India they are sold by the locals on the markets as seasonal delicatessen. To the ancient hunter-gatherer, it must have been an important source of food, especially right after the long period of drought. It would be vital for survival at some point. It would be, maybe a God-given, a God-given thing, perhaps. Now, when I was researching the swastika, at some point I obviously learned that it is considered an auspicious sign in Hinduism and Buddhism. I didn't really look at the other symbols, but I remembered there being an umbrella. Then seeing the pictures of the Termitomyces titanicus, which goes over a 1 meter diameter, I felt there must be something there. I mean, who did not yet think about the similarities between mushrooms and umbrellas before? So on YouTube I found an Indian biologist, Mr. Nundkamar Kamat, who is a total fungophile, so to say. And more specifically, he dedicates his attention to the specific to this mushroom, the Termitomyces. He too connects this fungus with the auspicious umbrella. The confirmation of my suspicion was a pleasant surprise, I must say. He has a YouTube channel, but not all videos are in English, but there is a paper available that I found. In this paper, he mentions the development of the spores, how they resemble wires, how they are snake-like, growing out of the termites specifically for the purpose designed chambers. And after penetrating the soil, they eventually rapidly grow into mushrooms as soon as the rain season has come. He addresses the Sankritization through Brahmanic, Puranic and Vedic influence on the old nature religion, showing very clearly how the developments of certain symbols in South Asia may have developed. He paints a credible hypothesis by attaching the symbols to natural phenomena, bringing the anthill mother goddess Sateri of Goa, the snake and the umbrella together. The stadia which the fungi go through during their growth easily can explain several of the interpretations made by the ancients. They are still present in the religious and cultural symbology of contemporary Asia, but as time and experiences evolved, they detached the mystique from the original observations. And come to think of it, the reason why it is so hard for moderners to translate ancient glyphs properly may be just because of that. What is left in our language that connects us to the reality of hunter-gatherers or early civilizations? This is still ongoing as we fail to recognize natural manifestations within the divine representations that humanity made during the last millennia. If mythology was based solely on celestial events, as some would like to make us believe, then the integration of these astronomical observations done by the earliest astronomers would have been necessarily imposed on the population, likely through the rendition of a priesthood. As far as we know now about the early Sarasvati, aka Indus civilization, for example, that was probably not the case. Archaeological evidence points to a lack of a strong and dominant religious caste. Animism and the worship of natural phenomena, combined with the lack of anthropomorphic iconography and tribal shamanism, on the other hand, go very well together. My point is that if you consider the value of mushrooms for the hunter-gatherers and the mystery of their sudden appearance, is it so surprising that they would record this just like they recorded the hunting poses? Is it within an animistic belief system not also to be expected that these would get a sacred character because of their expression of time cycles? With the advent of the polytheist religious trends, Hinduism and Buddhism, the old mother goddess lost her central position and was replaced by a male supreme deity. In Buddhism, there is a goddess known as Arya Sita Tapatra. Sita meaning white, Tapatra meaning umbrella. She is the goddess of the white umbrella. With thousands of eyes, she guards over us, and thousands of arms, she protects us in compassion. She still expresses the same concepts as the animistic aniconic earth goddess, merged into polytheistic Hinduism and Buddhism during the Middle Ages. Sitapatra is born out of the Ushnisha or head knot of Buddha, similar to the head knot younger boys within Sikhism are wearing. Uznisha can also be translated into umbrella. So over time, the veneration of hill and representation of the goddess transformed into the veneration of the sage or deity in contemplation, trapped inside this hill that grew around him. Iconography provides the image of the sage or god figure inside a small hill, and there are clues that allow speculation on the mushrooms growing on the anthill being transformed into the umbrella. That is my thinking. Usnisha Sitatapatra, by some considered a female Buddha, others think of her as being one of the only female bodhisattvas, combines the original icon of the Earth Mother with a white mushroom-shaped umbrella. The goddess managed to survive, and it is the fact that she was not anthropomorphized completely that took care of that. In the meantime, the symbols became integrated in the religions that followed instead, expressed in their iconography and architecture. Umbrellas have been connected with nobility as they were the tool to keep the ruling class from tanning by the sunlight, and it is tempting to consider that this be the only reason why it is still found in certain iconography around the world. But I have reason to believe that there is more to it than just that. An example that underlines this, in my opinion, comes from the Vatican. The Roman Catholic Church uses umbrella symbolism in their basilica and during transition rituals. But that put aside, some of the earliest statues of the Buddha show him with a giant mushroom overhead. And quite a lot of material is out there on the connection of soma, or the elixir of life, and hallucinogenic mushrooms. When I made the episode on Agni and the swastika, I briefly mentioned soma, his counterpart. Where Agni is connected to the sun and fire, Soma is connected to the moon and water. He is also the lord of vegetation. Mushrooms, most certainly belong to his realm, but where most of the research that is available, and I want to stress that the work that was put into documenting and presenting info on some of these sites is really amazing, but it focuses on the hallucinogenic mushroom hypothesis only. The connection to any other Termitomyces or whatever is lacking completely, and that despite the representations connecting deity with mushroom and serpent. I will not, however, deny that there are leads to the Amanita muscaria, and that the ritual use of this particular mushroom has been mentioned in the early Buddhist text. Some Buddhist texts mention the Buddha died after eating poisonous mushrooms, but it would be a bit odd to express such occurrence in divine iconography. I don't know, that's just my opinion. But Soma was certainly more than just a mind-expanding potion. There's a lot to say about all that. There's interesting connections. But I better stop here for now, before the video becomes too long. I will address the architectural side of the story in the next and last part of this mini-series, and I hope to shine a light on a few very curious and interesting connections to other parts of the world. Also, a special thanks to those who give me sincere support. I hope my vids offer an added value in return. I will be back soon. Thank you for watching.